Welcome to another episode of the State of African Agriculture. Today, we'll be speaking with Ndidi Nwuneli. She's the co-founder of AACE Foods, managing partner at Sahel Consulting, and board chair at Nourishing Africa. We'll be discussing her new book, Food Entrepreneurs in Africa, Scaling Resilient Agriculture Businesses. Join me. Ndidi, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Fine, it's great to connect with you.
Yeah. Congratulations on the new book. When I heard about it, I got excited because I was like, okay, Ndidi has a new book, and I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs can't wait to get their hands on it. So you have a lot of experience, working in the sector, years of experience, managing different agribusinesses, being on different boards, and being involved in a lot of policy environment. One of the things you mentioned in the book was no external force can address African agriculture's food challenges. We have to drive our own transformation. Can we speak more on that?
Yes, I think you agree with me that 2020 and 2021 has proven that in times of crisis, global crisis, every continent becomes insular, and they put the needs of their own citizens ahead of any other needs, which makes complete sense. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw countries closing their borders to food exports. We saw new restrictions and cuts in aid. And more than ever before, I think there's been a wake-up call for all of us that the World Food Program can't save us, donors can't save us, and we can't depend on the rest of the world for food. Now, our region is naturally endowed for agricultural excellence. There's no reason why we should be net importers of food and why we should have high rates of malnutrition. It is the sense of urgency I feel, and all of us in the sector feel, that we need to build back better. We need to transform our ecosystem and really unlock the potential that already exists in our continent and enable our entrepreneurs to scale. And one of the reasons I wrote the book, Wandie, is because entrepreneurs are the lifeblood of the food ecosystem, not the government, not civil society. Entrepreneurs, SMEs. And in our context, they need help to scale. And they need not only the business acumen internally, but they need an enabling environment. And Africans have to own this space, and Africans have to transform the landscape.
You talk about Africa has to own the space and transform the landscape. But with my experience with entrepreneurs, I realized that a lot of them tend to work in isolation. How can they keep complaining about their challenges, but they don't get involved in the business policy making? How can they get involved and network beyond their local regions?
So one of the things I realized from writing this book is I went across Africa. I interviewed over 80 entrepreneurs, policymakers, development partners, investors. I realized what you just said. African entrepreneurs are isolated. There's a distrust that we typically have of each other. She's going to steal my idea. He's going to steal my idea. And because we've been fighting in this barrel for a little pie, instead of working together to grow the pie, we have limited ourselves. You mean you go to a country like Ethiopia and you interview a fantastic entrepreneur, and at the end of the interview, you say, can you refer me to any other great entrepreneurs? Do you know the response? I don't know any. I don't know any. Are you kidding? In the whole country, you don't have one or two friends who are supporting you in this journey? No. And this was a consistent response I heard across the continent. And one of the things that I realized is because we see this as a limited pie, but the landscape is wide open. So we're fighting for $1 million when it's a $1 trillion industry. Some people even estimate a $3 trillion industry, and yet we're fighting for $1 million. And so the first thing that has to occur is a mindset shift. That mindset shift that you cannot make it on your own in this sector. You cannot. It is not possible. You can't do everything. You can't be an input provider, a producer, a logistics provider, provide the finance. You're dependent on all the other players in the value chain. This is a sector that is value chain dependent. And if one piece of the value chain is broken, the other piece will face a bottleneck and a limitation. The second is that we have to decide how big we can grow this sector. And all the multinationals, they have entire departments focused on advocacy and R&D, and they have teams that focus on corporate communications SMEs do not have that luxury. The only way we can build that is by working together. We have to work together on R&D. We have to work together on publicity and on advocacy. And I realized through this book, and I have a whole chapter focused on resilience, is that if we don't shape our ecosystem, if we don't shape it, if we don't shape the policy environments that affect us, others who are much larger than us, mostly multinationals operating on the African continent, will shape the ecosystem to our disadvantage. And they strengthen numbers. So if you're not part of an association, join one. If you're not part of a think tank, join one, because you need to get your voice heard. You know, during the COVID-19, I actually was part of a board of directors of a large multinational, and they were talking about closures and lockdowns and limitations on transport. And all along, the government did not recognize the food ecosystem as vital. They were focused on, oh, we need our health workers to be transported, we need our pharmaceutical firms to work. And immediately in that board meeting, I heard this. I said, let me write to the Governors Forum. Who do I know? Let me write to MAN. And you know what? I ended up helping edit the government policy on who could transact, who could be on the roads during the COVID-19 lockdowns. I realized that that was a special opportunity I had to shape this ecosystem. How many other meetings and dialogues are we not part of because we're SMEs? And the only way we can get our seats at the table is by collaborating. And you have an important role as a media to help us to raise awareness about those issues. But most policy discussions don't have SMEs at the table. And it's imperative that we start working together. That's one of the things Nourishing Africa is trying to do in the ecosystem by bringing entrepreneurs together now in 34 African countries. But in every country, we need that coalition to be built to shape policy.
I love that you talk about that because, again, entrepreneurs, SMEs complain about their challenges. They talk about it. And I always ask, so what are you doing about it? How do we even know we have these challenges, these issues on ground? So I love that you talked about that. But entrepreneurs make up 80% of food production on the continent. You know, first challenges hindering us for us to come to the international market. I know you mentioned it's up to us, the entrepreneurs, but what can policymakers, stakeholders, I guess everybody collaborates, what can we do to make sure that we create an enabling environment for businesses to thrive?
Well, there are a number of things government has to do. The first one is that government has to streamline the policies and ensure that they're consistent. This flip-flopping of policies we have in our ecosystem is destructive for the agriculture and food landscape. You can't wake up one day and ban the importation of rice, and then the next day you give quotas to multinationals to import rice. Then the third day you say, okay, no, you can't import rice paddy. Any investor in the rice value chain is exposed and faces the brunt of this flip-flopping of policies. And this occurs because most of our ministries don't talk to each other. So we need an ecosystem approach to policy making. It means that the Ministry of Trade and Investment, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Budget and Planning, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Agriculture have to work together to streamline policies in the interest of local SMEs. So that is number one. Number two is the importance of financing. In the agriculture ecosystem, there's so many financing mechanisms that have been launched in many of our countries. But again, they're contradictory, they're not supportive of each other, and they still favor the largest companies in the ecosystem. The companies that have the bargaining power, that have the collateral, that have the networks and relationships, they don't benefit SMEs. We need streamlined agriculture mechanisms, we need de-risking and catalytic financing, and we need financiers that are sympathetic, but also understand the value of our sector and can work alongside us as partners. Three is that we need to close the gender gap. Both of you and I are both women in this sector, and we realize that women are still highly disadvantaged in the agriculture ecosystem, not only because of land ownership at the primary production level, but you also see limitations all through. You don't see women in logistics, you have middlemen, you don't have middlewomen, you don't see women owning tractors or machinery, you don't see women in inputs, you don't see women in research or policy or in financing. We don't have female extension workers. Recent research by the World Bank reveals that Nigerian female farmers produce 30% less than their male counterparts, linked to the quality of inputs they utilize, the access to land that they have, and just the productivity results. Those same research statistics also reveal that female entrepreneurs make 66% less profits than their male counterparts. This has a direct impact on the profitability that women earn. We have to close the gender gap in agriculture. It is imperative. And then the fourth, and equally important, is the importance of infrastructure. We need infrastructure, feeder roads, large silos and warehouses, shared processing facilities. We need cold storage. We need infrastructure across the board to reduce the cost of doing business in our country. Energy, we need energy, affordable energy, especially in our processing zones. So there's so much around infrastructure that the government can provide through PPPs. I really believe in private-public partnerships to provide this infrastructure. And then last but not least, the government needs to address the insecurity in our country. This is not unique to just Nigeria. This is across the Sahel and is affecting agricultural productivity. If farmers are not safe and cannot go to their farms, they will not engage in agriculture. This is imperative. It's imperative. And if I can add one more, Wandie, I know I have a long list. I would add the need to revamp agricultural education. Agriculture is still being taught as a science instead of business. And for years, I've been championing for the revamping of our research institutions, the revamping of our agriculture institutions. And one of the reasons I wrote this book, Wandie, is that I hope that it will be used as a tool in every single university in Africa, every single business school, and every single agriculture institution to teach young people about how to make money in this sector and to get them excited through the case studies and examples of others who have done it, to see themselves in this sector and see opportunities to be entrepreneurs or employees in the food and agriculture ecosystem.
Oh, actually, I'm looking forward to this book, actually. I'm excited that you mentioned that. And research is always a forgotten sector or niche in the sector. So I'm happy that you said that. But I want to go back to, recently we had the food block with the crisis going on from the north to the south, and this was an issue during COVID-19. So with the pandemic, the food system exposed, the fragilities that we have going on, and nutrition has never been more important. It's connected to our health system and our immune system. How can we advise, how can food entrepreneurs get involved in building forward better, but also assist in helping, our food palette, our nutrition, better ways to involve nutrition foods in our meals? Because, Nigeria, we have a different palette. How do we get there?
Thank you for that question. I'm very passionate about nutrition. I mean, my company is called Sahel Consulting Agriculture and Nutrition. And data reveals that 94% of households cannot afford a healthy diet in Nigeria, 94%. Nutritious food is too expensive. I mean, recently we see that the price of eggs has almost doubled in our country. And eggs used to be the most accessible form of nutrition for children in our country. So there's an urgent need to address malnutrition. And entrepreneurs have an important role to play. Number one, entrepreneurs have to create innovative approaches to processing nutritious food. And this is critical. I mean, one of the game changer ideas I've shared during this UN Food System Summit is the importance of a virtual global R&D lab for entrepreneurs, SMEs, so that they can fast track innovation around healthy food. In Nigeria, we have soya beans, we have black eyed peas, which are called regular beans, right? We have okwa in my part of Nigeria, all highly nutritious lentils and bean products, but it is too difficult for the average consumer to cook it every day. Soya beans takes about 6 hours to cook. Now, if you can come up with a very affordable snack or processed product that's made of these products that is affordable, people will consume it. It is a fantastic alternative to all the unnutritious food that we consume in our country. So we need innovation in the SME landscape, and we need to help these SMEs with innovation, because it takes a long time to bring a new product to market, to make sure it's tasty, it's acceptable, it's affordable and accessible. The second thing is that we really need to raise awareness amongst consumers. And this is where Consumer Protection Agency comes in. This is where consumer groups come in. The average Nigerian is not aware of how unnutritious or even harmful the food they consume is. They don't know. And so we have to raise that awareness. And we have to partner with media organizations such as yours to raise that awareness so that consumers are informed and can make better decisions. We also need our regulatory agencies to step up because food safety is critical. And when we started AACE Foods, we didn't realize how much of a crisis we're facing in our country, not just locally with food safety standards, but that a lot of what we import into Nigeria is substandard. In fact, Africa is often considered the sink of the world. And so we have to stop the food from coming into our countries and continents because it's also distorting our food ecosystem and causing a lot of damages. So there's so much to be done, but I'm optimistic that with entrepreneurs who are innovative, creative, and eager to work together, leveraging opportunities like the Scaling Up Nutrition Network and other networks, we can change the narrative and we can make money and do good.
Thank you. And economic growth in agriculture is 2 to 3 times more effective at reducing poverty and food insecurity than growth in other sectors. You'd mentioned that you want the book to be in schools, but we have a high rate of unemployment among youths. And with the COVID-19 pandemic, the numbers are rising. However, there are a lot of opportunities in the sector. You and I know that. What advice do you have for current and potential entrepreneurs? How can they access these opportunities, but also develop compelling, sustainable business models for entrepreneurs that battle with startup constraints and such as finance, management, recruiting talent? And I know all that is in your book, but I want you to give us a little bit summary on that.
Thank you. So I'm going to just share 2 slides from my book, which I think really address the 2 questions that you've raised. So I firmly believe that there are tremendous opportunities for entrepreneurs in the food and agriculture landscape, especially our young entrepreneurs. And the trick and the real value is when you think through your business model and come up with a viable business model that can scale and generate profits. Who are scaling? I came up with 6 critical components, which I'll share with you. The first is that your business idea has to be demand-driven with measurable value addition. Now, many of us think, oh, I've come up with a great snack idea or a great granola. Let's just be specific, an African granola idea. And it's really going to make a lot of money. But what we often don't realize is that it's not just our friends who are our customers. If you're thinking about a business at scale, you have to think about the millions of people who you're trying to target with this product. It has to be affordable, it has to be available, accessible, and acceptable, which means many people have to be willing to spend their money on it. Everybody who uses that product or service has to see the value addition, how it has transformed their lives. The second is that you have to, Latin has shown us anything, is that there's no way you can scale without technology. Data gives you valuable information and allows you to make strategic decisions and pivots. And innovation is critical. Every single day you're coming up with new ideas. How can you make it better? How can you do more with less money? How can you reach more people? So innovation allows you to be creative. This is critical. The third is that you have to shape your ecosystem. And we've talked about this. You have to understand the laws, the policies, the competition, the stakeholders, the champions, the opponents in your ecosystem. You have to shape that ecosystem. You cannot wait. Many times we say, oh, I'm just producing a product. I don't have to deal with government. I don't have to deal with local government. I don't have to deal with my industry associations. Unfortunately, you have to deal with them. It doesn't matter what aspects of the value chain is, there's regulation. Number 4, your business model has to be cost efficient, has to be dynamic with clear systems and structures. Millions of customers within Africa and across the world. Your efficiency is critical. And that means you have to put in place systems and structures that make you efficient. 5, it's so important. You have to sell yourself. You have to package yourself. You have to brand yourself with simple, compelling branding. You have to tell your story. We look at some of the darlings in our food and agriculture sector, and we say, how come they're always attracting the funders? How come people always showcase them? It's because they know how to tell their stories. And this is critical, and I know you believe in it, Wandie. It's so important to tell your story. And finally, but equally important, your business model has to adapt to climate change. It has to be agile, and it has to mitigate risks and shocks. COVID-19 was one shock. There are going to be many more shocks. The question is, how do we build the resilience of our food ecosystem and our businesses to be able to withstand shocks? Climate change is real. We had flooding cover 5 states in Nigeria last year. It's drought in the Horn of Africa, drought in East Africa. This is part of our ecosystem. How do we mitigate that? How do we adapt? What do we put into our company's DNA to ensure it can adapt? If you have these 6 components, you are sure that you're going to succeed. But agility is key. Being able to respond to what is going on in your environment and the changes in your environment so that you continue to reinvent yourself. And I've realized that many of us don't really think through what I capture is how so many people started with one business idea and ended up with another one because they realized what they thought of initially was not going to scale and was not really a compelling business idea. And I hope that all of you are ready to pivot. And after you read this book, many of you will pivot and be able to scale and truly make the impact and the money that you want to make in this sector.
Ndidi, thank you so much for these details. I'm so glad about what is in the book. And I think this is what entrepreneurs need. So some of the key points you mentioned are key things entrepreneurs need. I'm happy you're talking about that. And I'm a believer of share your story, share your brand to access all this funds. So I would ask you, I have a lot of questions to ask, but I'll make sure I don't ask you. So people have to read the book. So you have to get the book to read the book. And thank you. I probably would ask you 1,000 questions. So get ready for that when I get my hands on this book. And tell us, when is the launch of this book? Where and how can we get our hands on this book?
So the book is going to be launched on March 22nd. We're having a webinar titled Preparing the Next Generation of African Entrepreneurs Who Will Shape the Food Ecosystem. And we have great speakers lined up. You can sign up for the webinar at www.sahelconsult.com/webinar. And the book is available in West Africa. Sahel has the rights to sell it. So you can email Sahel, info@sahelcp.com to get a copy of the book. In West Africa. If you're buying outside West Africa, you have to go to the British publisher called Routledge, and it's on the Routledge website. It's also going to be on Amazon globally. It's already on Amazon for pre-order, and that's for Routledge as well. Obviously, there's a price differential between West Africa and the rest of the world. I secured rights to West Africa because I wanted this book to be affordable to every entrepreneur. While Routledge can get it into all the leading libraries in the world who can pay, the British pounds and the American dollars, I know that my West African entrepreneurs want to read a book, and I want it to be affordable. So please get a copy. It's very, very affordable. And all the proceeds from the book are actually going to our Sahel CSV, community service projects. Last year, we provided scholarships to students in schools, and we also provided sinks and face masks to schools in Abuja and Lagos. And this year, the team is going to be doing some help wash and agriculture initiatives with the proceeds from the book. So it's really to make a difference in your lives, and I hope you get a copy.
I would, and I would get 5 copies so I can support 5 entrepreneurs. I'll give it out. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Wandie.
And I apologize
for
connecting
with you.
Same here. I apologize for the network issue that we had to go through. So thank you very much.
Worries.
Good luck on the book launch.
Thank you so much. All right.